This is slide 6 in our 70s unit, Nixon's Cold War successes. So let's talk about the Cold War. And if you're going to talk about Nixon's Cold War, his foreign affairs, you have to talk about his biggest foreign advisor, his most trusted foreign advisor, a man named Henry Kissinger. This should be a very short slide. We talked about a lot of this in the 60s, into the 60s unit. So we'll move pretty quickly through this. Nice short slide for you. But anyway, Henry Kissinger is Nixon's most trusted foreign policy advisor. And it will be Kissinger that will organize Nixon's two historic trips to China and the Soviet Union. So let's talk about China first of all, where Nixon will meet with Mao Zedong, Chairman Mao, head of the Communist Party. This is February 1972, not a coincidence. Both these visits happen in spring and summer of 72, right before the re-election campaign for fall 72. So it's part of a campaign strategy. But Nixon will go to China, and it's the first time a president had gone to either China and the Soviet Union while in office. Nixon will meet with Chairman Mao Zedong, communist leader of China, and they will normalize relations between the United States and China. Basically just means the two governments are going to start talking to each other. Since China became communist, the United States has had no official contact with them. Nixon says that's ridiculous. This is one of the largest, most populous countries on earth. They're not just going to go away because we want them to. We've got to learn to deal with them. So Nixon will normalize relations, start talking again. Now, part of the deal is, though, that the United States has to recognize a one China policy and stop, or at least reduce, our commitment to Taiwan. If you'll think back to the Chinese Civil War, when Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists lost, they fled to Taiwan. And since then, the United States had been doing business with them. China's going to say, you got to calm that down a little bit. Okay? This is one China. We consider Taiwan part of China, and you will too. So as part of the deal for starting up a conversation with China again, we have to recognize that Taiwan is part of China. Okay? Here you see a picture of Nixon and his wife at the Great Wall. And next to that, Nixon shaking hands with the Soviet Premier, Leonid Brezhnev. Yes, that's Brezhnev. That's how you say that. Nixon in May 72, February was China, May is Soviet Union, will go to Moscow and meet with Brezhnev. And really sort of two things come out of this. One, he signs a grain deal. The Soviets have been having trouble feeding their people. So they sign a deal to buy American grain. This is good for American farmers, makes them a lot of money, and the Soviets can now feed their people. We never wanted to starve people anyway, so we're helping to feed them, which is a good thing. The second thing is Nixon will negotiate the SALT Treaty, S-A-L-T, Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty. Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty, SALT. We're going to reduce the number of nuclear weapons being produced by the United States and the Soviet Union. Now, the talks here around SALT will focus on détente. We've talked about this before. Détente is a relaxation of tensions, a lowering of tensions in the Cold War. Nixon's the first president since it began, back in 1945, to reduce the level of hostility between the Soviet Union and the United States. Every president since then, the Cold War is ramped up. Nixon's going to calm it down. It's détente, a relaxation of tensions. Okay? Now, the visit to China and the Soviet Union is part of what's called triangular diplomacy, and we've talked about this before too. It's playing one nation off against the other. When the Soviet Union sees Nixon and Mao talking, they get very nervous and suddenly they're willing to do business with us. When Mao sees Nixon and Brezhnev talking, they get very nervous and are willing to do business with us. The last thing either China or the Soviet Union want is the United States teaming up with the other one. So Nixon will play the two off of each other. It's really Kissinger's idea, but Nixon plays it out beautifully. Nixon's a really good foreign policy president. Another one of these, would have been remembered for these great things had it not been for Watergate. But it was. All right, we'll finish here with the 1972 election. We talked about that at the end of our last slide, that Nixon didn't need Watergate. He was going to win anyway, and you see that here. That's a very red map. He will run against South Dakota Senator George McGovern. McGovern will only get 17 electoral votes, 520 to 17. This is one of the most lopsided electoral votes in history. McGovern doesn't even win his home state of South Dakota here. I know it's hard to see the red on red. He will win D.C. and Massachusetts. That's it. He wins a state and a district, period. And I think Massachusetts has always voted Democrat. Doesn't matter who's running. So, Nixon will win re-election in 72, even, he didn't need Watergate, but there it was. So, that's Nixon's Cold War successes. All right.